Hey everyone, this is Indy and welcome to my Cataclysm Discipline Priest Guide. This guide is current up to patch 4.0.3 and will include, where applicable, keynotes from 4.0.6. As a Disc Priest, the first two talents are easy picks. Improved Power Word Shield will increase your absorbs by 10%. Twin Disciplines increases spell damage and healing by 6%, so this talent is a staple for any spec. Mental Agility reduces the mana cost of instant cast spells, and as a Disc Killer, you'll be routinely casting spells such as Power Word Shield, Prayer of Mending, Penance, Power Infusion, Pain Suppression, Dispels, and Cures. In patch 4.0.6, the cost of both Power Word Shield and Penance will be raised, along with a buff to the effectiveness of both. Evangelism is a simple passive talent that for Disc Priests will give you a stacking buff when smiting. The buff lasts 20 seconds, but it's refreshed with every smite. While buffed, you'll receive 30% mana reduction and 20% damage bonus to Smite, Penance, and Holy Fire. At first, this may seem confusing, but when paired with the next talent, Archangel, you'll have some great new healing mechanics. With a 5 stack of Evangelism, using Archangel will restore 5% of your total mana and increase healing done by 15% for 18 seconds. You won't find every fight is an appropriate situation to keep your stacks up, but this is a very good talent to take. The next talent, Inner Sanctum, is most beneficial in PvP settings, and as such, you should skip this one. Soul Warding reduces your Power Word Shield cooldown, essentially making you free to spam bubbles, though nowadays we don't really do that anymore. Having the option to do so, however, is a must as a Disc Priest, because we certainly don't want a cooldown on one of our most potent absorb spells. Renewed Hope increases the critical effect of Flash Heal, Greater Heal, Heal, and Penance by 10% on any target with weakened Soul or Grace. And good news, in patch 4.0.6, Grace is no longer limited to just one target. Power Infusion, while frequently reserved for DPS in the past, is now most valuable when used on yourself in encounters. The buff to haste and mana reduction are quite valuable, and when properly planned, the spell can be used multiple times in a given encounter. Atonement is the talent that allows us to Smite Heal. When you deal damage to a target with Smite, you instantly heal a nearby low health friendly target for 100% of the damage dealt. When coupled with your Evangelism, you can expect to see your Smite heal for a respectable amount. This is a smart heal, and as such it will choose the lowest health targets in range, including pets. Inner Focus used to be a debatable talent, but now with just a 45-second cooldown, it's an easy pick. When activated, it gives you a free Flash, Binding, Greater, or Prayer of Healing spell, and increases the crit chance. Rapture is incredibly important to Disc Priests. We don't have the combat regen that Holy Priests benefit from with their Holy Concentration, so this is a great way to get mana back every 12 seconds when a Power Word Shield is completely absorbed or dispelled. Borrowed Time gives us 14% spell haste to the next spell cast after casting a Power Word Shield. Reflective Shield is currently not a useful spell to the PvE Priest and as such should be skipped. Divine Aegis procs on all critical heals and every prayer of healing, creating protective shield on the target, absorbing 30% of the healed amount and lasting for 12 seconds. And in patch 4.0.6, any crit heals from prayer of healing will result in a bonus amount to your Divine Aegis. Pain Suppression is one of the nicest cooldowns we have. It reduces a friendly target's threat by 5%, reduces all damage taken by 40%, and increases resistance to Dispel by 65%. Be mindful of your timing, however, when using this on a tank. Strength of Soul reduces the duration of weakened soul on your target by 2 to 4 seconds when you heal them with the heal spell. This is not a must-have spell since we no longer shield spam, however, it is still beneficial with Rapture. In patch 4.0.6, Strength of Soul occurs when the priest casts Inner Focus on oneself, rather than Power Word Shield. Train of Thought is useful if you find yourself regularly casting Greater Heals and Smites. When talented, you can reduce the cooldown of your Inner Focus by 5 seconds for every Greater Heal cast, and the cooldown of your Penance by half a second for each Smite. Focus Will is a damage reduction talent that procs on you when you take damage equal to or greater than 10% of your health. This isn't very useful in PvE, and it will not proc on damage absorbed, so you should skip this talent. Grace is a must-have talent that applies a buff stacking up to 3 times on the target of your Flash Heal, Greater Heal, Heal, and Penance spells, and increases all healing received from you by 8% per stack. This effect lasts 15 seconds, and great news, again in patch 4.0.6, this is no longer limited to just one target at a time. Finally, Power Word Barrier. This summons a holy barrier that reduces all damage to friendly targets inside by 30% and lasts for 10 seconds. Also, while within the barrier, spellcasting is not interrupted by damage. This is no longer an absorb spell, however, having a guaranteed amount of time makes this spell much easier to plan out and play strategically. Under the Holy Tree as a Disc Priest, you'll likely be skipping the Renew talent. Renew is not a spell we find ourselves regularly casting, and it is not efficient on mana. Empowered Healing is a must as it increases the healing done by your Flash, Heal, Binding, and Greater Heals by 15%. Divine Fury reduces the cast time of your Smite, Holy Fire, Heal, and Greater Heal spells by 0.5 seconds. Be sure to take this talent as well. It's worth noting that Desperate Prayer, while currently deemed trivial as it heals for just a tiny fraction of your health, will be getting buffed in patch 4.0.6 to heal you for significantly more. Inspiration is a good talent for any priest as it reduces the target's physical damage taken by 10% for 15 seconds after being the recipient of a critical heal. Surge of Light gives you a 6% chance when you smite or heal to cause your next flash heal to be instant cast and free of mana, but incapable of a critical hit. With the upcoming patch 4.0.6, this can proc off of flash and greater heals and will become capable of critical hits. Should you have leftover points and decide to use them in the Shadow Tree, your choices will be Darkness, which increases spell haste by 1% per point, and Veiled Shadows, which reduces your Fade and Shadow Fiend cooldowns. Glyphs are categorized by Prime, Major, and Minor, and you'll get to choose 3 of each. Suitable Prime Glyphs include the Glyph of Power Word Shield, Penance, and Power Word Barrier. Alternatively, but less desirable, are the Glyphs of Flash Heal and Prayer of Healing. Ideal choices for major glyphs include the Glyph of Divine Accuracy, which is a must for Evangelism and Atonement healers, Dispel Magic, and Mass Dispel. Alternatively, you may choose to glyph for Smite or Pain Suppression. Minor glyphs are far more trivial and are completely based on personal preference. The ones I chose were Levitate, Fortitude, and Shadow Fiend. As a Discipline Priest, your most valued stats will be, in order of importance, Intellect, Spirit, Haste, Crit, and Mastery. Alternatively, if you're having mana regen issues, you can easily reforge, gem, and enchant more heavily for Spirit and go lighter on Haste until it becomes less of an issue for you. Intellect will clearly always be your most valued stat as it gives you a bigger mana pool, increases spell power, regen, and crit. Spirit is a pure mana regeneration stat. Its value is weighted differently depending on your current gear level and stats. If you have mana issues, this will be a more valued stat for you. Additionally, make sure every item you choose has Spirit as a secondary stat whenever possible. Haste decreases cast times on spells, allowing you to cast more spells in a shorter amount of time. However, haste should never be stacked if you do not have adequate mana regen. Critical Strike rating increases your chance to crit with spells. Crit heals will also proc Divine Aegis on all your targets. Mastery increases the potency of all absorbs. Right now, it's debatable as to whether or not to pump points into Mastery as a Discipline Priest, but upcoming patch 4.0.6 will get more powerful shields and absorbs, making this stat much more viable. For enchant choices, the following are all acceptable choices for Discipline Priests. For your Helm enchant, the Arcanum of Hyjal provides 60 intellect and 35 crit rating. This enchant's available at Revered Reputation from the Guardians of Hyjal Quartermaster. Shoulder enchants are all available now through the Therazane Quartermaster. At Honored you can purchase the Lesser Inscription, but ideally at Exalted you'll be using the Greater Inscription of the Charged Lodestone, giving you 50 intellect and 25 haste. Disregard these if you're a scribe and can apply your own. Take the 50 intellect to Cloak enchant. Alternatively, if you're a tailor, you can use Dark Glow for mana restoration or Lightweave for spell power. Currently for chest enchants, your choices are 40 Spirit or plus 20 to all stats. For your glove enchant, you'll want to use the 50 haste. However, after patch 4.0.6, you may switch out for 50 mastery. Bracer should be enchanted with 50 Spirit or 50 Haste. I would favor the Haste if you're not having mana issues. In the upcoming patch, 50 Intellect will become available, and as such should be the enchant of choice. Your leg enchant will come from using a powerful ghostly spell thread giving you 95 intellect and 55 spirit. Tailors can also embroider their own leg enchants for just 3 Eternium threads. Enchant boots with 50 haste, however after the patch you may decide to go with 50 mastery or Lava Walker, which is 35 mastery and a slight movement speed increase. For weapon enchants, I strongly recommend Heart Song to healers. It procs a nice spirit buff quite frequently. Alternatively, you can enchant Power Turret, which can proc an intellect buff, but this enchant comes at a hefty material cost and has twice the internal cooldown as Heart Song, so you'll see less proc rates. If you equip an offhand, get superior intellect, however note that in the patch 4.0.6, it will be reduced down to 40 from 100. Gemming can include a wide variety of choices and combinations. I recommend gemming for socket bonuses when possible, but not at the cost of taking unneeded stats for sake of gem colors. Your mana gems are either the Ember Shadow Spirit Diamond that gives 54 intellect and 2% maximum mana, and the Revitalizing Shadow Spirit Diamond that gives 54 spirit and 3% increased critical healing effect. Currently, the Ember Shadow Spirit Diamond is the slightly better choice for healing. Your gems of choice will be comprised of the Brilliant Inferno Ruby, which gives 40 intellect, the Purified Demon's Eye, which gives 20 intellect and 20 spirit, the Reckless Ember Topaz, which gives 20 intellect and 20 haste, the Potent Ember Topaz, which gives 20 intellect and 20 crit, and the Artful Ember Topaz, which gives 20 intellect and 20 mastery. Now that we've gone through all of the talents, glyphs, stats, enchanting, and gemming choices, let's move on to your spells. The ones you'll use most frequently are Power Word Shield, Penance, Prayer of Mending, Heal, Greater Heal, Pain Suppression, Power Infusion, Inner Fire, Smite, Archangel, Hymn of Hope, Divine Hymn, Prayer of Healing, Power Word Barrier, and Inner Focus. Less frequently used but still important are Leap of Faith, Flash Heal, Binding Heal, Cure Disease, and Dispel Magic. Mass Dispel, Renew, Fade, and Inner Will. Cataclysm healing is much more dynamic and will require every healer to stay on their toes with quick reactions and decisions. It's no longer our responsibility to heal all of the totally avoidable damage. We can expect our DPS classes to be situationally aware enough to avoid the unnecessary damage. We no longer have endless mana supplies, so we need to make the best possible choices to both keep people alive and stay mana efficient. This means that topping everyone off is no longer our goal. Instead, we must focus on healing enough to get through an encounter without going overboard or compromising mana. The Disciplined Priest will likely be found as the tank healer. While we certainly can support raid healing, our strength is in single target heals and absorbs. Periods of time in which there's little to no raid damage going around, take the opportunity to stack Evangelism by smite healing. Do this of course when your tank's not taking heavy damage, and will comfortably get by with your atonement heals. I personally keep Archangel up whenever it's available, however some priests reserve this buff for the times when heavier healing is needed. I don't really have a static rotation, but I usually always open up with Power Word Shield and Prayer of Mending on my tank, and after that I use my most efficient heal for the current need, and when applicable I stack Evangelism. Be sure to always use quick or more expensive heals very sparingly. Try not to get too stressed over the massive raid damage. We're generally not looked at to raid heals, so instead always focus on your tank. Certainly assist raid heals when your tank's not in jeopardy, but not at the expense of your mana pool. Other than that, make good use of your cooldowns.